Hello and welcome back to Hope is Kindled, where stories spark change, literature meets life, and hope is not just a concept, but a call to action. Today, I want to talk about a book that found me during one of the hardest transitions of my life, a time I can only describe as my own metamorphosis. Everything felt uncertain. Old versions of myself were falling away, and I didn't know what would replace them. It was then that I discovered Carol S. Dweck's mindset, The New Psychology of Success. And it changed how I saw not only myself, but every moment of failure, doubt, and growth that had led me here. This book helped me find perspective when I needed it most. It reminded me that no matter how difficult the moment, we are never finished products, we are living works in progress. Carol Dweck, a Stanford psychologist, spent decades studying how our beliefs about ourselves shape our lives. She discovered that people generally live with one of two mindsets, fixed or growth. Those with a fixed mindset believe abilities are static, that you're born with what you've got, and that's it. Those with a growth mindset believe talents can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. It sounds simple, but this distinction changes everything. If you believe you can grow, you try harder. If you see setbacks as lessons, not verdicts, you transform pain into progress. That was the perspective I needed when I felt broken, that I wasn't broken at all. I was growing and evolving. Dweck's own journey mirrors her message. Born in 1946, she grew up fascinated by how children responded to challenge and praise. Her early experiments in the 1970s showed that when kids were told they were smart, they often avoided hard tasks for fear of losing that label. But when praised for effort, when told, "You worked hard on that," they became fearless learners. Her work came of age alongside the cognitive revolution, when psychologists began understanding that the brain itself could grow new connections, a finding that rewired education and leadership philosophy worldwide. And yet, long before neuroscience confirmed it, history was filled with examples of people who lived it. Think of Abraham Lincoln, who failed in business, lost elections, and suffered unimaginable personal loss, but kept learning. His entire life was one long lesson in perseverance. Or Gandhi, who transformed himself from a timid young lawyer into the conscience of a nation. Or Viktor Frankl, who discovered in the darkness of Auschwitz that while everything can be taken from us, the last freedom, to choose one's attitude, remains. Each of them embodied what Dweck would later call a growth mindset. Growth mindset is not just a theory, it's biology. Brains grow when we struggle. Neural pathways strengthen when we practice something difficult. Effort is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wiring in progress. When I was trying to rebuild my life, that idea gave me courage. It told me I wasn't starting over, I was leveling up. People with growth mindsets embrace challenge, learn from criticism, and find inspiration in others' success. Fixed mindsets avoid difficulty and see failure as proof of inadequacy. But here's the truth. Failure is not proof that you can't. It's proof that you're trying. If mindset is the compass, then grit is the fuel. Psychologist Angela Duckworth, who built upon Dweck's work, defines grit as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. It's the strength that keeps us steady when excitement fades, the quiet determination to finish what we start. Dweck's research shows that grit grows directly out of a growth mindset. When we believe effort matters more than innate ability, we're more likely to persist. We stop asking, "Am I talented enough?" and start asking, "How can I get better?" Grit is the art of staying in the arena when the applause has stopped. It's the habit of returning, again and again, to the work that refines us. And it's vital, not only for success, but for meaning. The writer of the Odyssey, Homer, understood this. Odysseus's heroism was not just in his victories, but in his endurance, in his unwavering will to return home, no matter how long the sea raged against him. The same spirit echoes in Theros Walden, in his patient simplicity, and in the words of Dance in The Count of Monte Cristo, "Wait and hope." All of these lives, fictional and real, teach that greatness belongs to those who finish. A growth mindset fuels grit because it transforms obstacles into opportunities. When we see each challenge as training, each setback as data, and each delay as preparation, then persistence stops being punishment and becomes purpose. We've seen this theme again and again across the great works we've explored on this show. In the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, Gregor Samsa's transformation could have been an awakening, but his family's fixed mindset turns it into tragedy. They can't see his change as growth, only as horror. In The Count of Monte Cristo, Edmond Dantes endures betrayal and imprisonment, but grows into wisdom and patience. Wait and hope, he says, the creed of every growth-minded soul. In Frankenstein, Victor's failure lies not in his ambition, but in his refusal to learn from it. His creature, desperate to grow, is condemned by a world that can't see beyond what it fears. Walt Whitman, in Leaves of Grass, declared, "I am large, I contain multitudes." That is the anthem of the growth mindset, the celebration of evolution within the self. And in The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky shows that redemption is a matter of inner growth, of learning to see love, even through pain. When we connect Dweck's psychology to literature, we realize that every great character arc, every transformation, every act of courage, is powered by the belief that change is possible. In 1963, Dr. Joseph Murphy wrote The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, a book that, at first glance, seems worlds apart from the laboratories and data charts of modern psychology. A very important book that we discussed early on in our podcast. These two works are kindred spirits. If you listen closely, you'll hear the same heartbeat. Murphy believed that whatever thoughts we repeatedly plant in the subconscious eventually bloom in the garden of our lives. Dweck showed this empirically, that belief shapes behavior, and behavior rewires the brain. Murphy spoke in the language of faith and imagination, Dweck, in the language of neurons and evidence. But both were describing the same miracle, that the stories we tell ourselves become the architecture of our becoming. Murphy urged readers to replace words of defeat with words of growth, to say I can, I am learning, I am guided. Dweck calls this reframing a shift from fixed to growth mindset. Murphy calls it prayer. Both call it hope. When I read Mindset during my own season of uncertainty, it helped me name something I'd long felt but never proven, that thought itself is creative. That how we speak to ourselves matters. When I later revisited Murphy's words, they struck me as the spiritual companion piece to Dweck's science. One speaks to the soul, the other to the synapse, but both insist that change begins in belief. So perhaps that's where these two voices meet, in the quiet decision to believe something better about ourselves. Murphy wrote, "Change your thoughts, and you change your destiny." Dweck showed us how. And somewhere between faith and evidence, hope takes root. That, I think, is the lesson worth carrying forward, that the subconscious mind and the conscious mindset are partners in growth, each whispering the same message in different tongues. You can become more. You are still becoming and evolving. So where does hope live in all this? It lives in the truth that who we are is not final. That healing is possible. That failure is part of the climb. That we are never too old, too tired, or too late to begin again. When I read Mindset during my own season of loss and uncertainty, it reminded me that hope itself is a growth practice. We can train it. We can rebuild it. We can choose to believe that tomorrow will not be a repetition of today if we meet it with effort, with openness, and with love. That's what this podcast has always been about. The human capacity to grow, to learn, and to find light in the dark. What Dweck uncovered is not merely motivational, it's revolutionary. She challenged one of the deepest myths of the modern age, that our abilities define us, that we are our intelligence, our grades, our success, our titles. But Mindset says something radical, that we are, instead, the process of becoming. When Dweck studied students facing difficult puzzles, she noticed something astonishing. Some children, when they hit a wall, said, "I love a challenge." They leaned in. They failed joyfully. Their brains lit up, literally. MRI studies later confirmed that people with a growth mindset show increased neural activity in the learning centers of the brain after mistakes. The mind hungry to improve rewires itself in real time. This is where psychology meets poetry. Because Dweck's message is not just about achievement, it's about identity. Who are you when you are no longer winning? Who are you when you've been rejected, abandoned, or broken? If your worth was tied to approval, what's left when approval fades? What's left is the self that grows, the self that persists, the self that chooses to believe there is more. When I first read Mindset, I wasn't reading it as a student or a teacher. I was reading it as a man trying to remember how to believe in his own evolution, in a time when I felt trapped in my own version of the cocoon, my metamorphosis. And like Gregor Samsa, I was faced with the same question. Will you remain defined by the shell others see, or will you keep growing in the unseen? Mindset gave me language for that transformation. It told me that change is not a lightning strike. It's the steady rain that softens hard ground. It's failing and choosing to learn instead of hiding. This idea finds echoes throughout philosophy. Nietzsche called it becoming who you are. Buddha called it right effort. In Christianity, it's grace and sanctification, the continuous renewal of the spirit. And in every one of those traditions, the truth is the same. Growth is sacred work. In Dweck's experiments, the students who believed they could grow achieved higher results over time than those who saw their talents as fixed, even when starting with lower ability. That's the miracle. It's not about where you begin, it's about your willingness to begin again. We see this in Don Quixote, tilting at windmills that no one else dares confront. In Walden, Thoreau builds a new life out of deliberate simplicity. In the Iliad and the Odyssey, Homer's heroes learn that true greatness isn't in conquering others, but in mastering oneself. Mindset reminds us that there is no final form. There is only forward motion. The growth mindset says, you are a verb, not a noun. A becoming, not a being. And that, my friends, is what it means to live with hope. Hope is the growth mindset of the soul. It is the belief that no matter what has happened, we can still write the next line. Before we close today, I want to say something personal. I am not perfect. I have not mastered this. If anything, I speak about mindset not from the summit of success, but from somewhere along the climb. There are days I still wrestle with self-doubt, frustration, and that quiet voice that says I haven't done enough, that I should be further along, wiser, steadier, stronger. But that's precisely why this book matters to me. Because mindset isn't about perfection, it's about permission. Permission to try again. Permission to see ourselves not as finished works, but as evolving stories. I don't share this book because I think I've made it. I share it because it belongs in the same chorus of voices we've been building together. Alongside Kafka's longing for transformation, Dumas's cry to wait and hope, Thoreau's search for simplicity, and Dostoevsky's plea for redemption. Each of them, in their own way, believe that growth is the only honest way through suffering, that learning and love are the twin engines of survival. So if you, like me, have ever felt behind, or broken, or unseen, let's agree that growth isn't a competition. It's a conversation. It's the dialogue between who we are and who we're still becoming. And that conversation, that living, breathing act of hope, is what Hope is Kindled has always been about. So take heart, my friends. We are not who we were yesterday. You are the sum of every lesson you've learned, every mistake you've survived, and every small act of courage you've chosen instead of despair. And if no one's told you today, I am proud of you for still trying. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep your face always toward the sunshine, and the shadows will fall behind you. Next time on Hope is Kindled, we'll step into the wilderness of the soul with Cheryl Strayed's Wild, a story of grief, hiking boots, and finding your way back to yourself. Until then, good journey.